Okay, let's see. Can you see the slides?
We can see the slide that's kind of your control plane. So basically not your main slide, but the slide that shows all the next slides and the notes.
How about now?
Yes, that works.
Okay. So thank you, Danielle, for invitation. My name is Helen Lee. I appreciate the opportunity to share a few things about influence. Influence is such a big topic. If you can walk away with a few concepts and with a few habits and practice you could do during your daily life, that I will consider mission accomplished. And I would also like to have a dialogue, more of a discussion, because it's such broad topic, and depending on where you are in the journeys, I would love to have a dialogue and have a conversation about this. So I'll spend some time to introduce some key concepts that we learned, and I found it very helpful for me and some of my classmates, and we try to introduce that. Like Daniel said, I have been working with Lily for quite some time, 20-some years. I had a few posts, including leading a China team. I was there for years, building a China team, and then I came back to United States and building a site for San Diego research. That's my recent post. So with no further ado, let's talk about influence. And it's, I think it will be appropriate to start with looking at the world influential people. And this is a few pictures that people picked, influential people in the world. And they actually influence in many different ways. You can look at Mark, the Facebook CEO. He runs the largest social media platform. And then, you could say he tapped into the biggest population. He can be influential. Prime Minister of Germany, he is a great leader. I think a very inspirational leader. I really look at him as a role model. He handled the pandemic crisis really, really well. And some of the controversial ones, right? The president of China, in the center of all this multi-nation tension, you could say he governed 1.3 billion people. He's very influential for good or bad. And the most controversial one, Osama bin Laden, even he died, his belief still carried on by his people, and you could say he's also influential. So influence is a very, very broad and topic, and people carry different ways and use the different means to be influential. So how do we start to understand the influence? So I will start, so the idea to be influenced is not to change you. You don't have to become a new person. I think Jeff Pfeffer, who is a most influential management thinker, and he's a professor at Stanford University. So he has this quote, right? The goal is to convince you that you can actually acquire power, not by becoming a new individual, but by doing some things more strategically and differently. So this is the purpose of today's seminar, is to introduce a few concepts and practice that we can use to practice to be influenced. So talk about influence. This is a strategy framework that I think it's very well articulated about influence. So it dives into 3 segments. The first one I think people are very familiar about is persuasion, right? So it has 3 aspects of the logos: the logic of your story, your key points, and your data, right? The pathos is how do you convey the message with an emotional resonance with your audience? How do you connect your story with your audience? The ethos, who is delivering the message. So the person with the credibility and the characteristic that people like, and people really respond well to the person that they like, right? So when you deliver, try to persuade people, think about your key points, try to tell the story, but use the language and message that you can connect with your audience. and also inject your credibility so that people actually believe what you have to say. So that's the key of persuasion. But to be influenced, having the message, having the story is not barely enough, right? So we have to also have a relationship with the people. And the key concept in there is exchange. So I think the key thing about networking, building relationships, is reciprocity is people will respond well when you also give what they wanted. So it's an exchange. Sometimes you could poor rank some people, but you only do that with last resort. Do that too often can backfire. The other key thing about relationship is ultracentrism. So ultracentrism is opposite of ecocentrism. It's really understanding other people's perspectives, try to understand what they want and what's driven them. So help you to build rapport and trust with people. And when you have a trust, a lot of things can be done much easier. And besides the negotiation of building the network relationship, and then the other thing is the structure of your relationships. So you can think about the network. You want to have a broad and disparate group of people that you know about. You could draw resource information from, and also when you have a key initiative, you have to build coalitions. So identify key people can support you, but also identify the key people can be against your ideas. So you understand how you can respond and either neutralize the threat or win them over. When you carry out the mission, you want a team, right? So building a team, win the loyalty of your team member is also very important. So this is the conventional wisdom about persuasion, about influence. And as people study, I think a set of new concepts emerged, allows us to use multiple tools in a modern world. So what I want to focus today is introduce those three main concepts as mega tools, enable you to use multiple tools in the conventional wisdom. So the first one is situational awareness. The second one is intentionality. And the third is agency. So for situational awareness, it's really try to understand what's happening around you and in your organization. And it's very important to be able to detect the changes in the environment. So typically, if you look at, apply our daily work, one of the key words you hear people saying is read the room, right? So what do you mean by read the room? It's really understanding, when you walk into a meeting, who is in a good mood, who is in a bad mood, and with what I'm about to say, who is going to like what I have to say and who is going to be against what I have to say and who's neutral. So you have to read your surroundings to be able to gauge the tactics and what you're about to say. The other thing is reading between the lines, right? So some people will say something, but it's very important you hear what you say, but it's even more important you hear what they haven't said, what they didn't say. They maybe convey their messages or their sentiments through body languages, facial expressions. So that's why even it's very important in the remote working environment, you want to have video on all the time. So you could read the body languages, whether your message was well received or your message doesn't get the intended impact you wanted, right? And then listen to your internal sense. When you sense something's wrong, something's definitely wrong, even though you cannot pinpoint what's wrong, but something is going on. So that's the antenna. Your antenna, you have to go follow your antenna, follow your internal sense, go dig deeper on what's going on. That will help you to prepare your initiatives or your task or your purpose. So I think this is a quote from the CEO of Delta Airline. I thought that was really well written. Leadership is like flying an airplane. You have to have your heads up and you have to have situational awareness of everything that's going on around you, right? So just merely paying attention to your purpose, your goal is not enough. because there's many things can hinder or sabotage your efforts. So you have to be paying attention to everything around you. People and the things. I thought the Cuban crisis that we all learned is demonstrating to President Kennedy how he was really aware of the situation. It's, you could see it's very easy to escalate a crisis, but it takes wisdom to actually diffuse them, right? So his quote, right? It is not the first step that concerns me, but both sides escalating to the fourth and fifth step, and we don't go to the sixth step because there's no one around to do so, right? So he really understanding the danger of escalating the missile crisis. So he's really working to diffuse them. So I think if you look at the timeline, I will point out one timeline. So while he was working with his team and diplomatic team to work with Soviet Union to diffuse the issue, the crisis, and there's a coincidence that U.S. You could say spy flight was shooting down over their airspace, right? It was like not, it was like escalated situation. Initially, Soviet Union sent a letter, proposed exchange, because they want to have a sit down to negotiate, because the spy plane shoot it down, and they actually send the second letter. It's much more bellicose, right? Wanted to start a war, but Kennedy has the wisdom to ignore the second letter and respond to the first letter for negotiation. They actually sit down to negotiate and then diffuse the crisis. So this is situational awareness, and also talk about intentionality, right? So yeah, so that transition well to intentionality. So acting with a goal in mind, right? You relentlessly pursue a goal, not distorted by distraction or secondary war. So people truly say that if you are not trading something off, and then you're not truly committed to your goal. So it is really showing the focus of the mission. So this is a few things that you can test whether you are intentional or not, right? Are you willing to trade minor goals to achieve your major goal? Are you work with specific purpose in mind? Is it careful to understand all the steps necessary to achieve the goals? A lot of times people say, the strategy is great, the fit is often at the implementation. That's because about, do you really understand what it takes to get there, right? And what are the potential hurdles and underground waves that can throw you off, right? Is intention the way how you allocate your time and resources, right? Do you attend every single crisis that come your way, or do you just let some of them delegate and focus on the major fires that can sabotage your major goal, right? Are you resilient pursuing the goals? Stay on track despite the potential distractions. So some of the key traits of being intentional is being persistent and also being strategic. So one thing about strategic is there's something you do and there's something you don't. It's always a choice. So being strategic is making a choice wisely and also focused. That's all we talked about a lot. So that's two mega tool. The third mega tool, I think it's very important, is the agency. So the definition of agency is to act and exert control over one's environment. So the vital characteristic of powerful people is they're actively shaping the situation they're facing rather than passively accepting what they find. So this is very, very important. I see a lot of people play victimized. This is not my fault, and this is somebody done something to me. And this is the opposite of agency. Being an agency is not accepting the deck of cards you're being dealt, it's actually stacking the deck. So actively shaping the cards that's being dealt, and actively shaping the situation, it's agency. Not taking, so the other thing you could say, how what agency plays out is people create new alternatives, right? When your negotiation is yes and no, but there's a third way. So be creative, be resourceful. There's other ways to get things done. You could see, the other thing, the agency is also very, very important and instrumental to solve the deadlocks. You see a lot of people when they go into a negotiation, you have to give me this, otherwise we walk, right? So coming up with certain alternative will help you solve the situation. Consider how the situation can be improved. That's another way to do that. Act before being asked to. So I don't know, some of the people in early career, for example, I think was being asked, take initiatives, right? See the things needs to be done and don't wait to be asked and then take initiative and act on it. That's agency. And just don't do go way above and beyond, right? Beyond your job expectations. The other thing about agency is push envelopes, challenging status quo. That's also a very important example of being take agency. So I said, I wrote it down like rule breakers, but not law breakers. You don't want to break the laws, but you could break the rules with a good cause. So a lot of times, especially in a corporate environment, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of practices were set up for certain purposes, but situation changes, right? Part of that, I see people very successful and effective is be able to challenge the status quo with the valid cause. And then you want to work within the rules, but get things done. So one example that is very prominent people, it's called Robert Moses. He's the master builder of New York City, and he's very influential in the urban development. And so while he was not elected to be a public official, but he was managed to host millions of dollars budget. And he is also be able to change the law so that he can issue bonds to fund additional urban development projects. So that speaks of his agency and also speaks of his expert power. So the quote from the mayor, talk about Robert, it's very, very telling, right? If you give a problem to Moses overnight, he's back in front of you with a solution all worked out, down to the last detail, draft of speeches for the newspapers, drafts to the state's laws that you will need to get passed, advices to who should introduce the bill in the legislature and what committee they should go to, drafts to any city councils and board of estimated resolution you will need. If there's constitutional question involved, a list of relevant precedents and complete method of financing, and all spelled out. He has solutions when no one else had the solution, right? So it's a matter of taking agencies and a matter of understanding what it takes to get to the goal. So with the three tools, I think this is very good quote I want to relay. I think people typically skirmish about politics. I thought this is putting a positive light on politics. People often worry about politics as a substitute for merits, but if manipulating rules and working within the rules are key to success, and doing so is considered politics, perhaps political ability is a merit. So I think this is very, very good mindset changing, right? Politics is not dirty. You don't have to play dirty politics at all. Understanding the politics, understanding how to navigate the bureaucracy, the system, and how to win people over to support your cause, and is a political ability, and it's essential to a path to be influenced and also be successful in leading large initiatives. With that, I will close with 7 habits. This is actually collected by Professor Macy at Wharton School, and he talked about the 7 habits of the influential people. I thought that was some of the good practice that we can integrate into our daily lives on that. So how are we doing on time? Okay, I think we're okay. So the first one is pick your spot. This is really about understanding the situational awareness, right? Understanding, stay vigilant about changes in the circumstance, especially the change in the risk and uncertainties and the importance, and knowing when to invest, when to double down, when to let it slide. Basically, you got to know if it's okay to stay with your daily routine or you should do something different, right? And if you want to study people who's good at this, President Lincoln is the master of the situation. When he tried to introduce the free the slaves in the South, and I think he asked all his lieutenants. He was going to introduce 6 months before he actually introduced them. And one of the lieutenants says, this is a bad timing because we are losing the war. If we do that right now, it's going to show as a weak, last straw of the weak governance. We should wait until the tide turned. And he did wait until he's winning the war, and then he introduced this legislation. So this is a demonstration of situational awareness, right? The second habit, and keep others' interests in mind. So we talk about Ultracentrism, right? It's really understanding other people's perspectives. And then, you know, Robert Moses, as influential, as forceful as he is, he actually is very good of understanding other people's needs. And he realized the more you gave others what they wanted, the more they can afford to give you what you wanted. So this involves not only keep the ideas, but they also feelings in mind. So it's a notion of pathos. The third habit is be fixed on goals and flexible on methods. So this is really about agency and intentionality. Is be willing to make trade-offs, right? So you have a lot of ideas, so you want to be able to intentional. Sometimes you see people understanding building a network, understanding win the loyalties. They be intentional about building the networks, building a broad base of supporters or people, rapport with broad people, so they can they can tap into later. So the fourth habit is cultivate relationships before you're needed. So this is actually a well-studied case about cultivating network. And then the key thing is about, this is not about network, is about thinking about people and relationships. So, and things get done through people. So you want to know wide range of people, either in your immediate circle or your third tertiary circles, so that you can get information, because you don't, the key thing about us being leaders, you don't know what you don't know. And then the more you know, the better you are to position your initiatives. So the key thing, and the other thing is to cultivate them before you need them, right? So the fifth habit is have the meeting before the meeting. I think you also hear the term about socialize the ideas, socialize the proposals. You want to talk to people before the official meeting to get their feedback, get their inputs, and sometimes even incorporate their input into your proposal and win them as allies and also the co-initiators, so that your idea is actually a better idea than you had before. So have the meeting before the meeting, socialize your ideas. It will increase your chance to win the support and finalize, get approval. Number six, don't accept circumstance as a given, right? So this we'll talk about agency. When the situation was presented, think about it. This is a phase, a state, right? But it's not going to be static. It's ever-changing, evolving. So play a role actively shaping the situation, and play a role actively understanding, and so it will help you with your cause. The number 7, and see the world as it is and how you want it to be. So this is really a balance of realism versus idealism. So you want to be realistic to understand what it is now, but you also want to have aspiration and inspiration what the world you want it to be. So with a leader, only be realistic with no passion, aspiration is feckless. So you want to have aspiration, inspire people to a higher purpose, but you also be realistic. How do you bring people, pave the path to your ideal world? So this is 7 habits, and if you could incorporate 1 or 2 of them into your daily life, I think that will help us get on the journey to be a practitioner, to be influential people. So I think I have some thoughts about network. I understand from Daniel, you guys talked about it a few sessions back, so I will skip that.
Yes.
This is some closing thoughts about power and influential. I thought Pfeffer said it really well. Building a power base is a process of accumulating leverage and resources control little by little over time, right? There's only one way to become more effective in building powers, and using influence is practice. Just like principle of compound interest, becoming somewhat more effective in every situation can over time leave you in a very different, much better place. So with that, I want to share this. I think this is very important as power changes people as you learn. And I think we also need to understand constraint the use of power. President Obama said it really well in his inauguration speech. Power alone cannot protect us, nor does it entitle us to do as we please. Instead, our power grows through its prudent use, emulates from it the justness of our cause, the force of our examples, the tempering quality of humanity and restraint. So with that, I will turn that to Daniel with any questions or comments people have.
Yes. So we can probably get to, depend on the timing, how we want to do this, but I think the questions raised by people in the chat is already relevant to the concept you just talk about, the agency, the Ultracentrism, etc. So SP is asking you if you can give some examples about how to manipulate the rules or not strictly following the rules. He understands the concept, but would love to hear some examples.
Yes, okay, so this is a very good question. So to break the rules, to challenge the status quo, it's really about understanding, help people understand, help people understand the higher purpose, right? Articulating what a higher purpose is and understanding. So rule is set by a set of assumptions and also a set of purposes. So you should try to understand what this rule try to accomplish. What is the end outcome? What the rule try to deliver to? And circumstances changes. You could achieve the same outcome, the same quality standard with different approach. So focus the end, with the end in mind, focus the outcome. You could try to bring people to see with different practice, with different set of approaches, you are not compromising the quality, you're not compromising the end outcome, you are achieving them, but just with different ways. And then what's the benefit of using this new approach, right? What are you breaking, and what is the downside of that breaking? Are you introducing any defects in there at all, right? So I think it's helping people to focus what success look like, what is the end outcome we try to drive, and that will help you to pave a path.
Yeah, I think something just to add on to this, if you look at some of the most successful rising stars in your company, they're more likely than not, they're probably not rule followers, they're rule breakers, right? So it's not to say that you want to break every rules, right? You want to pick your battle. You want to identify a key objective you want to achieve. Say, hey, I want to get this project done. This project is top initiative, top visibilities, but the limitation of my title, the limitation of my existing power prevented me from getting the support, from getting the hardware, the infrastructure, etc., from the people that I work with, then in that case, I need to find my way around it, right? So there are limitations in place. Say you cannot deploy this code by next week, or you cannot get the support until the spring planning, whatever. I'm talking about technical terms, right? But if you really think this is mission critical, time critical, then escalate. Find people, find your support, and speak to the person. Say, can we make exception? This is super important, and we want to get it done by next week because it can generate this much of incremental revenue. And go do that. Don't just be bounded by, because the engineering says you cannot do this, the QA said you cannot do this, the product manager says you had to wait. So if there's absolutely something that you want to get done, that's basically, we can break the rule a little bit, try to find exceptions, try to find cases where you can bypass the rules and just get it done. And because you understand by the moment you finish the project, it's going to bring you so much more, right? Obviously, not everyone feels comfortable with this. So there's going to be incumbents or existing stakeholders that might feel somewhat uncomfortable with this. But if you're clear about your objective, you really want to get this project done, and then sometimes that conflict is inevitable. And this is where it kind of relates back to the topic that Helen just mentioned. Sometimes, not be afraid of having conflict, and having the might, having the hard power is also important too. So I'm not sure that gives the some good examples, and maybe at what time do you want to break the rules? So I think there's feel free to use the chat room to post questions. So before that happens, I think, Helen, that's the end of your slides, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch over to a couple of things on my end. So Helen, if you don't mind, maybe stop sharing for a little bit. Let me share my screen as well. And then we'll get to the a panel discussion. I collected a bunch of questions. I think we have a lot of people to sign up that submit a question at one point, and then I summarize these, and we can talk about those, kind of like the guided approach. And then at the very end, we'll also open up to everyone that if you have questions, please leave those in the chat room in public so everyone can see it. And then we can talk about those too, as time permits. So we'll try to gauge that. So give me 1 second. Let me share my screen. This might be it. All right, can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I think I also had the same exact content as Helen just presented, just this additional things I put together just as a reference. We can quickly reference back to those key ideas. This group under persuasion, relationship and negotiations. There's also the relationship on structure, and then lastly, the meta tools that Helen spent quite a bit of time addressing, right? Intentionality, situational awareness, and agency. And then also, this is something that we can group together. So ethos, might, and coalition can be grouped together under hard power. Whereas, hard power really means is you're not afraid to have some conflict. You're not afraid to use your formal authority that's given to you by your title, given to you by your responsibility, and you're not afraid of escalating, right? So you don't have to agree with everything that comes to you. So it's definitely something that you can also use. We do advise you not to abuse this power, right? If you always use might, if you always use ethos means that people need to trust you because I did this in the past. It's kind of, in a way, kind of feel like bragging. Or at the same time, also coalition. Those are all good examples of hard power, which is great is to have, but at the same time not to overly use them, right? And then the soft power is really, building up the relationship. And this you can see that from team building, allocentrism, which is super important. There's some examples, question people brought up in the panel discussion. We'll address them using allocentrism. Basically means that you want to understand what they're coming from. You understand why they need it, right? So you need to have the perspective as opposed to egocentrism. And then networks and exchange and pathos, those are all examples of the soft power, right? Pathos is kind of like, you want to be charming, you want to be, eloquent. People, listen to you because who you are. well, not because of who you are, but what kind of person you are, right? And then lastly, this is all of the things that Helen talked about: the situational awareness, intentionality, and agency. And also here we have logos, but those are all understanding situations, understand your goals, and be analytical about how you want to use the power, right? Have the perspective, etc. So kind of really break things down, all things we talk about into the hard power, soft power, and smart power. And one of the last thing I really want to address here is this evolution of influence behavior. So we talk about a lot of different strategy. Helen give you a good overview of all things you can leverage. And if you think about this, a typical MBA thinking, right? You have a 2x2. You have the narrow versus broad, the consider versus automatic, right? And basically this is the narrow versus broad is like the spectrum of what you, how many things are you thinking at the same time? What is the focus on your mind? And so everyone starts from here, beginners, bottom left quadrant. You want to gain awareness, break old habits, because things are automatic, right? You've been doing this for 20 years, you've been doing that for 30 years, 40 years, and you wanted to break out, be aware, hey, this is what I'm doing because I've done that in the past, but now I need to be aware, one specific thing to make some changes, right? And then you want to make that from automatic into consider. So you start exploring what can be done differently, one thing at a time, right? And then you expand your horizon, expand into more skill set, more inventory tools that you can allow you to, be more influential. And then eventually over time, over practices, you become the expert. So that's like the evolution of your behavior that you can, purposely change over time. And then I think the quote here is super powerful. Knowing others is intelligence, but knowing yourself is true wisdom, right? The same thing goes with mastering others is strength, mastering yourself is true power. So this is extremely relevant to how we want to use those things, from your day-to-day. You can start tomorrow or start Monday when you return back to work. And all of those assets, all of those tool sets are things you can actually leverage starting on day one. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to jump right into the panel discussion. I know there's some questions, I'll get back to them, but please do leave the questions on the board. I'll also double check those every once in a while to see how much time we have. And we can get to the questions if there's a lot of questions, and then we can definitely squeeze some of the things we have here on the panel discussion. So Helen, let's start with this, maybe the basics. I think some of the questions are already explained by Helen's slides. So what are the different type of ways of influencing others, and how to leverage the resource to your benefit? I think those are pretty much all addressed by by Helen's discussion earlier. And then I really like this question: how to make me accept that influencing others is a comfortable process, but not manipulation, right? And then I think Helen, you also addressed that in one slide, where politics sometimes is actually good. Having, using politics is a form of merit if it can get you to where you want it to be, if it can get you to achieve the objective, that no other means good, right? If you, not break the rule, follow the rules. And I think that can kind of answer that question already. Helen, do you have anything to add on for those three questions before I proceed?
Yeah, I think the key thing about its influence is you have a purpose, right? So if you think about what you're trying to achieve, and it's as a noble mission, it's higher purpose, and rally people around you to get everybody to a better places, is a noble mission. So it's not about manipulating to somebody to get your own way. You're actually serving a higher purpose, and that's how you could feel comfortable doing that. You're not playing dirty politics. You actually try to help people to see the better world and leading people to that better world. So I think part of that is inspire people with the new world, and win them over to support you, to help you, to work together towards the better world. So it's not about manipulating people to get your own way. So think about that. It's not about you, it's about the cause.
Okay. What about did any risk involved in expanding the influence?
I don't think so. I think to be influential is a very good thing to have. I think if you have to say a risk is how you go about, meeting people and bring people along. I think part of that is, we talk about that authentic leadership, right? Be authentic, be true to yourself, be true to the mission, and then connect people, be and caring about the people around you, and truly show you care about them. I don't think there's any downside to maximizing their influence. Again, to influence people is not about you, it's not about our personal, it's about the bigger mission.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's to add on to your answers. I think there's no risk involving expanding the influence. There might be risk involved in using a certain aspect of your strategy abusively on influence. So one example is like hard power, right? You use might all the time, saying that if you don't do this, I'll do this to you, right? If you over abuse it, obviously it's really, really destructing, to, especially in the long-term relationship, with your colleagues and such. It can definitely take a hit. And at the same time, if you do not use it religiously, if you always avoid any type of conflict, that's also not great for you too. So I think this is there's a risk in how you apply the influence strategy. If you over abuse it, or if you do not use any particular strength at all, there's could be downsides. But if you balance it, obviously, it's, you need to have the situational awareness to know when to use, what strategy, at what time, and to what extent. So that's probably something I want to add on to this. So let's move on to this. Most people come here, try to expand their influence because they don't have the power or the titles or, what's given to them. So one person is asking, as a student himself, like with no power, no work experience, or professional experience. Now, how do you influence or increase your sphere of influence? How do you expand your influential power, your political power, and such?
Yeah, I think the best way to do this is to know people before you need them. I think be purposefully building a network, getting to know people. And, part of that is also gathering the informations, because and also think about casting your net wide, and gathering the information, play the meta game. You have a purpose, but there's much bigger pictures. Always try to understand the bigger picture, the implications, the peripheral connection to your purpose. Because I think the more you understand the entire dynamics, the better you are in navigating uncertainties and managing the risk, and be less likely be caught off guard, or down the left field. I think it's really. I want, if you want to really study Heidi Rosenberg, she is the well-known network, very influential network entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley. And she actually had this practice. I thought it really good. When this pandemic it's over, I probably try to practice. She always tried to have a dinner party and try to know people. And then the way unique about she set up this dinner party is she will invite half the people that she knows and half the people she knows. So and then people come to this meeting, you always get to meet people that you don't know. And this is where you can extend your knowledge base, your network base. Eventually it's going to into your influence network. The key thing is cultivate them before you need them.
Yes. And also just to add on to that, I think just maybe a more concrete example of what I did when I was a student is you have no power because, obviously nobody pay attention to you as much because you don't have any relevant work experience. But there's things you can do, like just, back to using Helen's examples or the framework, agency, right? You don't get limited by your title, but find your way around it. You can try to also the intentionality, right? So there's basically things you can do to expand your influence, like join student organizations. There's actually, when I was at Boston, there's I think there's a student-led organization called MIT Chief. Basically, it's a event that the MIT students put together once a year. They bring entrepreneurs and business leaders around the world to speak at the conference, right? So through events like that, you can really sort of one is gain perspective of what the business and what the entrepreneurship and the technology startup look like out there. At the same time, by expanding those events to more regions, to more reach out, kind of expand the scope. They also are kind of given opportunity for other people to see, hey, you're a student, but you're doing all these amazing things that can also help you to increase your sphere of influence as well. So, be a volunteer, try to create something meaningful, join a nonprofit, or, be part of the volunteer of some organizations where you get to, reach out to people and, really kind of make a dent in the impact that you're doing. So that's also something you can potentially do. Okay. And also, here's a question for you, Heather, which move on to the next one. And then, how do you let others listen to you? And when you don't have the title, how do you show your leadership skill? I think this kind of relates back to leading the team, managing the team. But when you don't have the manager title, for example, how do you demonstrate your leadership skill to your peer and also to your boss?
Yeah, this is typical for the young professionals. I think first of all, you need to get to know the person, and also this is where you could build a rapport with the person, with the people that you try to work with, and also demonstrate your expertise and your expert power, where you could use the data and use the knowledge to show what what you're talking about. And and this is also where you cultivate likability. People will likely to agree with people they like, right? The other part is give and take, right? People are built to respond in kind. If you gave other people more what they wanted, and they will likely give you what you wanted. And it's really understanding those people and connecting with them emotionally. Having lunch with them, talk about work, life outside of work. Try to build some common ground. Talk about kids, habits. Go hiking after work if it's single. Try to build some rapport outside of work. Find the same topics that you're both interested in. This will help people to, and then when you demonstrate your expertise and then what you're talking about, they will much easier to respond.
Yes, I think just to add on to that, the concept Helen just mentioned, I think allocentrism is extremely important. Knowing their perspective, understand what they want, right? So if you understand what they want, you can cater your message and deliver something that they will definitely listen to. So I think both concepts, I guess situational awareness, knowing what might be changing, what might be happening, and then the allocentrism, read the rooms and read the emotion, the motivations from the people you try to speak to. That's super important. And this is kind of goes back to the question, or I guess the example Helen gave, having a meeting before the meeting, right? Try to speak to someone. If you have a I guess important meeting that you want to present your ideas, try to identify the stakeholders who might be against it, who might be on the support, build coalition. But at the same time, having that additional meeting and say, hey, I'm going to talk about this. Do you have any objections? What's your key takes, right? So having that additional meeting really helps too. So I think those are examples where you can have other people listen to you. And show your leadership skill when you don't have a title. That's kind of going back to the agency, right? You want to get something done, but at the same time, there's might be limitation on what you can do. But to my early examples, if you're this analyst, a brand new analyst that just joined the team, that you think this project is super important, you want to get it done, it's okay to break some rules. It's okay to go around some people, as long as your objective is this objective is extremely clear to you that you want to make it happen.
Yeah, I think the leadership is not leaders. people, they're only leaders, people willing to follow them, right? So to show your leadership is to actually demonstrate people willing to follow you, and people willing to follow you is normally you trust in you that you can take them to a better places, right? So demonstrate the better places and building the trust with the team individuals. It's actually instrumental for you to help people listen to you. Yeah.
Yes. And I think the next question is super interesting. I think a lot of people are, especially for us Chinese and Chinese Americans who, were taught to be modest, right? When we were kids. But here you want to let people to know your achievement, but you also want to appear naturally without bragging it, right? That's like a key challenge, and also kind of relate to that, how to best deliver your image in a company. And to gain that additional visibility properly, right? And then also not at the risk of, people are saying, hey, this person's showing off, or this person's bragging, or claiming all the credit. What are your approach to this?
Yeah, I think, just for this Chinese professionals, I think you just need to remove that bragging notion from your vocabulary and from your mindset. I don't think no matter what you do, it's not bragging to other people. Just forget about that. Just forget the notion that you're actually bragging. Actively talking about your accomplishments is a good thing. And then I think we just need to change our mindset that it's okay to talk about it. Because people, think about this, people want to know, right? When you try to introduce, I actually just recently introduced myself to a leader in the organization. And, because I have been doing this for a while, so I never thought about this as bragging. Just remove that from your mind. It's not bragging. Actively talk about your accomplishments. Actively share what you could do for them and how you can help them to be successful is a good thing. So I think for Chinese professionals, I think you need to, a couple of things. Practice elevator speech, right? So people, especially at high up, they are very busy, and because they have a broad scope, and their mind is only can fix on certain things and a few short point. And if you lose them in your first 2 sentences, they're gone. So practice your elevator speech. What is the most important thing that you have that people need to know? The track record, the accomplishment, the top skills, the school, the training you have. The elevator speech is 30 seconds. Within 30 seconds, you have to package your most impactful work to deliver that message. Think about that. And then never thought about your bragging yourself. No, people actually want to know. So people at the leadership positions, they want things to get done, and things get done through people. So they want to know the talent in the organization. They want to, especially young people, right? Young people, they're flexible, they have a high learning agilities, they're smart, and they're quick on thinking things. So never undercut yourself or talk yourself down of doing any of those. I think those are good things. And then on the people on the receiving side, they will love to hear what you have accomplished, what you could do for the organization. So the challenge for us is to packaging those sentences into concise sentences, high impact sentences that people get it the first 30 seconds. It's very important. Don't think about it as bragging at all. But also, I think I saw a lot of people, they drive down into the details and then people get lost, right? So you have to be able to elevate your skills and your experiences to a level that they can understand that. What does it mean to them, right? What can you do for them, for the organization? So that's a key practice. I would suggest you should practice that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really like the notion. Well, first of all, bragging is maybe a little strong words. I mean, but if you really did it, if there's no, like you're not overly kind of inflating your achievement, then saying what you did is not bragging. I completely agree with that. And also the notion about speaking at a high level. Make sure whatever you're doing. It's actually a lot of things I see when I'm helping people to kind of change a resume. And also this is just also for myself too. When I was making changes to my own resume, you want to quantify the impact and understand how does this particular thing achieve the overall overall goal, right? Where is this, strategically, what place, what place does it, does it belong, and then what impact is it making? So if you have that concept, and then you can quantify your impact, quantify your achievements, that's super helpful as opposed to go right down to details. Oh, I implemented this code. I did this particular launch, and you want to really kind of take a step back and say, how does it relate to the overall strategic goals of the company, right? How does it basically, how does the work help your boss get to his goal, or help your boss's boss to get to his goal? So having that concept, having that perception can also help you win out too. And the other thing I want to quickly talk about here is, I think getting people to know your achievement doesn't have to come from you. So the same thing that Helen talked about, the notion of exchange and reciprocity, those are ideas where you give something out to people and people will return in kind, right? So which means that if you can, do not hesitate to give out compliments or call out achievement of your team member, of your partners, or people you work with, if they did something extraordinary, and it's thanks to them, or call it in the meeting, thanks to them, now we're able to do this. Because they did this, that enabled us to get to the next level, and people will return in kind. Because I think things coming from your own mouth is one thing, but if you can also get other people to talk great things about what you did, that can also add additional benefits, right? So you want you to let your boss know about what you did by telling them directly or telling your stakeholders, but at the same time, if it comes from someone else's mouth, that can also be super helpful. So the notion of the exchange and reciprocity really comes in play, and do not hesitate to give out people credit for doing what they did, and then people will return in kind. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to the next question is more of a kind of similar notion, but this is more about senior leadership. Think about executive level, chief executive, the head, the VPs, extremely important stakeholders. People don't report to you, right? And how do you work with them? How do you influence those people? You clearly do not manage them, right? And then, but they also, have a lot of direct reports, or maybe, indirect reports like you. And, how do you, grab their attention and make sure they understand your achievement, or having a way to kind of, message that achievement to them. So kind of relate to the first question. I'm not sure if you, Helen, if anything else to add. You can relate to your personal experience as well.
Yeah. By accident, I was presenting in front of a CEO and actually won the budget support for my program. I was looking back, how did it work? It was not my intention, but it just happened that way. So this pressure has a couple of aspects, right? One is influence stakeholder and senior leaders, and the other is people don't report to you, and then the other one is tough boss. Let's talk about the senior leaders and stakeholders. I think from my personal experiences, I think one is reputation. So when you're young, and you need to really very, very careful in protecting your reputation. I remember one time one leader said one thing, and it resonated really with me. Reputation takes years to build and take a second to destroy. So you just only need to do one bad thing, and then your reputation is destroyed. So you have to be actively protecting your reputation in the corporate through what you have done, through word of mouth. So be mindful of you deliver the results, and also how you deliver the results. You don't want to kill a bunch of people achieving over a bunch of dead bodies. That's not gonna work well for you, right? So the word of mouth will travel. And with a senior leader, one is reputation to credibility will help you. The second part is really be able to speak. This is where we talk about see the world what it is and what it would be, is your vision, right? If you have a vision, paint the vision, and also understanding what is the most on the senior leaders' agenda. What is the agenda? What is the most important thing they worry about? What is the thing that keep they up at night? What are the biggest challenges the organization is facing, and what's your idea how your initiative can help move the organization forward, move the needles? So with the vision, how you could bring the whole organization forward, and that's going to be attractive to the senior leaders. They want to see people step up the plate. They want to see people have a vision and lead a team to implement that vision. People who do report to you have a different levels. Boss, of course, doesn't report to you, and then peers doesn't report to you. Many times it is building the relationship, building the trust. Working in an organization, have a reputation that you get things done. For example, building your brand, right? Be very intentional about building your brand, whether it's hardworking, innovative, willing to challenge in the status quo. Moses has a brand of get things done. And many people who are rising star, they often have a tag on people just get things done. So if you have that reputation, and when they have tough luggage to crack, they always come to you and say, hey, I can trust these people no matter how hard the problem is, they can get it done. They can get it solved and delivered. So those are the things that you could use to leverage to rally people around. And the other thing is, it's not about how successful you are, it's about how you are being perceived, how successful you are. So this is, again, protecting your branding and images.
Yeah, we had another classmate of ours, Jun Huang. He presented the managing, how to effective leading the team. I think at one point he mentioned, how to manage up, how to manage a tough boss and how to manage senior leaders. We'll encourage you guys to maybe refer back to that slide. That's actually also shared on YouTube. Sorry, just phone calls. Yeah, there's also it was shared on YouTube. We'll encourage you guys to see those. It's all public available. This will be recorded and shared on YouTube as well, by the way. And then, yeah, so always reference back to the key concept, to the examples, and what the speaker talked about. All right, so moving on to the next one. And this is kind of talked about a little bit, but when you join a new team, this is kind of similar to your STEM example, but when you join a brand new team, a brand new firm, and how do you start influencing right away? How do you, because you have no domain knowledge yet. You don't have that reputation. You don't have the title, certainly. So now how do you start getting exposures and, make sure people listen to you and such? So any ideas, examples you can share with us?
Yeah, so I have a couple occasions that we went to, I went to China, to build a new, they have existing there, and then I come to San Diego. I think the key thing here is have a vision for the team. Of course, I'm a different position. I'm a leader, so I have a vision and talk to stakeholders, really having a dialogue, understanding their perspectives with your business partners, align the business strategy so that you can get support, right? Foster the relationships with your team member. I think the key thing, domain knowledge, of course, but the key thing is show the care, walk the talk and be authentic, and also care about them. I just recently had a conversation with another leader, and he actually walked into a new team, and the team member are all senior to him, and also he doesn't have a domain knowledge. And his trick, I thought it's very interesting, is nobody before him was care about the people development. And actually people development is his strength. So he actually had a conversation with all the team members about their career, about how he can help them to develop their career. And that actually built a trust. And they enable him to set the ground into the team and be able to lead the team. I think it's really understanding what your strength is as a leader, what is your leadership style, and what you can bring to the table. Every leader is different. Every team dynamics is different. Understanding what is your value to the team, it's very important. And then create your strengths. It's very important to play your strengths. Do not follow the footsteps of prior leader because they might be very different. And you don't want to put your shortcoming versus their strengths. You really need to understand your strengths and play to your strengths. Because, you know, the value you bring to the team is different, is unique, and that's why you're important to the team. And even to the firm, it's really understanding where you can contribute to the value and advocate that, articulate that to the people, to the leaders, to the peers, to the customers, where you can help them to be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a similar notion from my end too in the past, where I stepped into this role and I inherited a lot of direct reports from the previous leader who left. So yeah, I think really try to be authentic and try to really care for them, understand what their career paths, where they're coming from, what they want to achieve is key to success, right? And then I think also at the same time, if you walk into a new team, doesn't matter if you're a leader or if you're a individual contributor who are fairly junior. I think it's also important to just learn. Maybe starting on day one, you don't need to start influencing right away, or maybe get your opinion heard, because that might not yet be relevant, right? So I think that's also knowing maybe the first week or two, try to be a little passive, try to be a good listener. I think, when you try to get other people to listen to you, maybe, listen to them first and understand where they're coming from, what the situations are, and, what the unique circumstances are, right? And then understand how the work you're doing and your team's doing, and how does it align with the overall company structure or company objective. And then that's maybe just kind of lay low and listen and be on the receiving end. And then once you form your domain knowledge, once you form your opinion, then you can start influencing afterwards.
Yeah.
All right.
Situational awareness. Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't want to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think now we're getting a bit more interesting questions. So now it's influencing people effectively, and there's some really concrete examples or questions that people ask, when we collect questions on the Eventbrite. So here's a good one. So when this is definitely not unique to one single person. I see that a lot. So a very common question: how to minimize the negative influence from your colleagues who happen to be on the same rank or even lower, maybe slightly higher, but you do not work, but do not manage you directly. Right, but they are not on your project, but sometimes saying bad things about your project. How to deal with these people, and then try to minimize that negative influence. Helen, do you have any thoughts or examples?
This actually happened to me. This has happened to me. Whatever reason that people do this, right? So I also get coached from my mentors. I think the key thing to do here is do not engage. People poison the well. But I like one of the leaders said early on, he says, when people point fingers, there's one finger point to the other people, three fingers point to themselves, right? So never engage in those petty fights, because nobody comes out winning in that. So how to deal with this is really understanding, stay true to the project and telling your stories, right? Finding your voices in the organization, telling your stories, and also form a coalition and form allies, and they will also speak for you. So, whatever negative voice, there will be positive voice to counter. They're not in a project, they can spread rumors, but they also understand the key influence people on that project, right? Solicit help. In this case, you could actively solicit help that your supporters, either your team member or your peer or your sponsors, to ask them to help advocate for you in the situation. But the key thing is that not to engage in those petty fights, not to engage, but instead of telling your stories, actively act loud in public, right? So make your voice heard in public, and make your voice in the teams, in a large organization. Make yourself visible. Finding the place right now. We have a Teams channel, right? So post in Teams channel, make people see who you are as a leader, right? There's one point, there's people who say you are, but there's also people who see who you are. It's very important to have your voice in this mix and your allies' voice in this mix.
Yes, absolutely. This is a very common problem. I also appear a couple of times. I mean, I gotta be honest though, this is a tough question to crack. Tough problem to crack is there's no absolute winning strategy, because I'm still struggling with some of those too. There's always going to be people that's kind of against your ideas, because there's taking share pies away from them for whatever resource you're talking about. So it's a constant battle. But I think things we learned from that influence session, potentially the situation awareness, first of all knowing who's against you, who that person, you identify that person first, right? And then also having that meeting before the meeting can help too. So maybe there are people are saying bad things about your project or about even you yourself. You try to talk to them, say, hey, confront them. Hey, what's the biggest drawback? Is there anything I can do to help you alleviate your concern on the project, or is there anything I can do to win your support? And sometimes you can win, sometimes you cannot, but that's fine. You got to have that knowledge, you got to have that information. And then also to Helen's point, gather correlation, form the correlation, gather support. That's also critical to this, because the more voice you can get, the more support you can have on the board, on the meeting, that's also a winning chance too, right? And also knowing who the decision maker is, right? There could be bad voices all the time, but if the key person supports your idea, now the project is a go, right? So that's also important. And again, kind of relate back to situational awareness. Knowing who support is critical, for you to win over for this project to go live.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they also, I think the key thing is also anticipate. Anticipate what's going to happen. Anticipate, and then kill some of the things nip them at the butt. It's very important, and prevent them to be escalate or acerbate.
Absolutely.
It's also being proactive. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that question is really relevant to you, Helen, especially where Eli Lily is a huge company with 100 years of history, and now creating influence in big organizations. This is probably up in your alley. Any ideas you want to talk about? I think there's also a relevant question on the chat: is what are the obstacles when you try to get to director level in a large U.S. organization, and how did you conquer it? So I think those two questions are kind of interrelated. So I'm going to present them to you together. Helen, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, so my personal experience is building a reputation of credibility. I think, and also every single project you work with, how do you say, secure them as your allies, right? So as you work on many projects, people get to know you on the project, and hopefully they are becoming your supporters. So gradually you have a large base as a support, and which you could first get information, which would help you articulate your mission or your goal, and also help you to gauge feedback as a sounding boards. Be influencing in a bigger organization, I think the key thing is to get things done and deliver. Once you have that reputation to get delivered, and people knows you, and then be reliable, right? People can rely on you. Gradually, you will have support from many different people. And then the other one is have vision, and be innovative, have a vision. People, if you can show the higher purposes, people will love to be a part of a success. People would love to contribute to a bigger global goal. So I think if you can connect with them at that level, and they were willing to go above and beyond, and also recognize them, right? So I think it's also bring them along. I also gave them recognition, and gave them a development path, and fundamentally, people want to be useful. People want to feel important, and people will feel pride if they actually made a difference. So this is where you can connect people with the higher purpose. Be a visionary and connect people with higher purposes. People will aspire to make a difference in the world. I think bring the goodness from the people. I think this is very important as a leader, is to bring the goodness from the people, because people can go many different ways. If you try to be negative and you just send people to a negative rally, don't do that. Bring the goodness from the people. I mean, everybody have a good side. Bring those out. I think that's a very important thing for a leader to do, is bring the goodness. And this is where I also speak to when you have an eye on talent and have an eye on what people's strengths are. And then when you build a team, you want to build the people have different expertise that can, as a holistic, I always talk about to my team is everybody has a blind spot, everybody has weaknesses. When you build a team, the entire team should not have blind spot. The entire team is well-rounded. This is where you could build a diverse team and then also bring the goodness from them, and they are be part of the global mission in their field. They're making a differences. They're useful. They will rally around you.
Absolutely. I think I think just to add on to that is, especially with the in a large organization, really have a clear, crisp understanding of what does your team and your work, how does it specifically align with the company's objective, and how does it specifically align with your leaders, your boss's objective, right? So that's how you get promotions, how you get expansion on the influence. Have that explicit sense, not just, oh, I'm doing this because I was told to do so. Now, understand the reason. The question we should be asking is, why do we do this? Now, how do we do this? Or what do we do, right? The question is why. That's probably more important than some other question we'll be asking. And also identify the question about who, right? Who's doing the work, and also who does it benefit, right? So I think those two things, if you understand how your project plays, with a larger scope of project groups or initiatives, and that can really help you, understand the importance of the project. And then when you communicate, when you try to influence, especially in a large organization, communicate at the right level of details, right? So when you speak to your boss, when you speak to your boss's boss, do not go down to the details too much. Do not, basically when there's an analogy I really like. I think this is also my shortcoming at one point. That's what my boss told me. So if you are holding a cup, you do not expect people to hose you with a water hose, right? With water hose, blast you with information. You do not expect that. You are expecting a cup. People hand you just enough water, just enough, enough cup of teas for you to consume. You do not expect people to blast you with a water hose, right? So that's a very important notion about communicating at the right frequency, communicating at the right, level. Think about radio frequency, right? If you're receiving FM and then people are blasting you with AM frequency, that you're not going to be able to understand or interpret it. So this is also, in a large organization, tailor your message to the right person, and also understand your spot. Situational awareness, Ultracentrism, all of those concepts applies here as well. Okay. And the next question is, we talk about the influencing other in your day-to-day work. This is, all those 16, I think how many tools that we have, maybe 15 or 16, all of them. Go back to, we'll share the slides, and go back to the slides and then go through each one of them and understand, this is something I can start on Monday, right? This is, there should be some key takeaways. So I really encourage you guys to take a look at Helen's slides, and we can probably go back to it at one point. And then really understand, and this is actually the whole list is here too. Go back to those, I think this, the hard power software, smart powers, and all the definition for all of these, and understand what they are, and then try to identify at least maybe one or two of your shortcomings, like, things that you like to improve, and then go back to work on Monday and then see how you can improve, how you can actually practice those on day one. Helen, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to this.
Yeah, I think, adding, so the way I really like, somebody made a comment, I read about it, a toolkit, right? So when you're young, you have a smaller range of tools. When you grow as a professional, your toolkit grow larger and larger. So try to be purposefully building the tools in your toolkit so that you can draw from. The slides actually share a lot of the skills and tools that other people have built, and try to work into your daily practice. And, gradually overall, you will see that you are becoming more effective over time. People see that I'm today where I am. I would say, I didn't see this coming, but I was just deliver what I was handing at the time and do the best I can at every single assignment. And gradually, I find myself growing with confidence and also growing with more politically savviness and growing with more ability to read the political situation. You just gain those insights with day by day practice. You will just get better and better at it.
Absolutely. I think also just to add on to that very quickly, we can go to the next question very quickly. And then when you're a kid, I think just back to your analogy, Helen, you have a smaller amount of tool sets, and then when you get a little older, when you get more experience, you can expand it out. So the analogy I have is like when you were a kid, you only have one tool set. Let's say a hammer, right? You have one hammer, and everything becomes a nail, right? Because you have one hammer, you use that tool all the time, and then you solve one problem, one particular way, and then over time you only have this one tool set, and there's only one type of problem you can resolve. But over time, if you expand it out, there's not just the hammer, but there's wrenches, there's other things that you can reapply, to solve each unique situation, because not everything can be solved by a hammer, right? So just really kind of diversify your tool sets, and then making sure that you are aware of which one is the best to use at what time. Okay, so the next question is also related to, I think someone was asking this question on the screen, but also, how do you bridge the cognitive gap for Americans who have never been to Asia and China? And then there's anything for us Chinese, and also the Chinese, for Chinese female, should do differently to have the desired influence in the US firm. And then I think someone was also mentioning that question on the screen too, about how Chinese leaders, or how do you lead and influence as a Chinese or Chinese American in the American professional setting? If you can also have some anecdotal examples, that could be super helpful.
Typically nowadays, maybe other people see me as an Asian Chinese female. I don't really go into day-to-day work to actively remind myself I'm Chinese, I'm female. And I view myself as a leader of the organization. And there's a mission of that position need to accomplish. And I will just do whatever I need to do. I think on the implicit side, because of our training, because of our culture, and because the way we handle things, we actually bring unique perspective to the problems. And even how we handle the situation is very unique. And that's a uniqueness. You talk about the diversity and inclusion, and I think you bring, I feel like I bring unique perspective to the table, unique value to the team. I don't really actually thinking about my athletic background. I will recommend you're a leader, right? It doesn't really matter where you come. Are you Jew? Are you from Iran? Are you from, people doesn't really, in the professional world, people really doesn't view it. Now, I think there are some stereotyping that people have, Chinese Americans. But I will say, don't subscribe to those things, right? And be confident on who you are, be able to speak with your voice and articulate your point of view, be prepared to articulate your point of view. Don't really take those stereotyping, because people might come in with a notion, and when they leave the conversation with you, and then they change, I will aim to go that they treat me as same as other leaders. They might have a different notion in the back of their mind, but I am not going to let them stop the interaction or stop me, or let the stereotyping to steer them away. Don't impose on yourself. I would say, don't impose on that. You think about what effective leader should look like and play to that, and what effective leader you are and play to that. I think it might be culturally challenging is to building the relationships and building allies and making the connections with your colleagues. I think, you know, sharing a unique background and unique knowledge might help you to build some relationships with your colleagues. I don't really let those two stop me, or I think, you know, just you're one unique people, just like people from Iran, just like people from you know, India. You're unique. You bring unique perspectives. I bring unique perspectives.
Absolutely. Maybe from my so from my personal take, I completely agree. Like, you know, sometimes you need to look past that. You know, don't think of yourself as, you know, Asian, Chinese, or females, but, you know, think yourself as leaders, right? For me personally, I do apply the self-awareness, knowing that there's things that, you know, I'm very typical Chinese that, you know, a little introvert, a little, you know, kind of a, you know, afraid to express your true feelings at a point in time, you know, always, you know, having this tendency to do, you know, avoid conflict, right? So it could be a culture, it could be myself. I don't know which one is it, but knowing, you know, having that self-awareness, knowing this is my shortcoming, and then reference back to the 15, you know, two sets or the inventory skill set that Helen presented, and identifying which one is my shortcoming, which one, you know, something I should be use more or use less, right? And then that can really help me tremendously, you know, as Asian, as Chinese, leading in an American firm. You know, what are the things that, you know, people might perceive you as, and how do you break that stereotype? Is something that I sometimes think about. But honestly, truth be told, you know, when I do my day-to-day, you know, I do not consciously remind myself that I'm Asian, I'm Chinese, I'm leading American teams. It's really just becomes natural. You know, just think of yourself as a leader. How does your work, your team's work, align with company's objective? If you deliver, that's all that matters. Okay, so let's get to the last portion of this panel discussion, especially around this time. You know, special time, special plan. And so maybe the first question is, you know, is there any tips for increasing the influence? I think we talk a lot about increasing influence in a company, but what about in the industry? So let's maybe focus on the second half of that question. You know, how do you expand your influence beyond, say, Eli Lily? Do you have any anecdotal examples? Or how do you expand your influence even beyond the industry, you know, into your, you know, professional circle, into your community and such?
Yeah, this is actually something I'm actively working on. I think, you know, be visible in the industry, you know, attend professional conferences and make presentations, building the networks, meeting people at my level, for example, or above, from other industry, you know, start some collaborations, consortiums, be participating in the consortiums, attending, you know, association conferences or meetups, right? And then the other thing, you know, to go extend beyond is serving on the boards and volunteering in the neighborhood, or what your passion is. Try to be volunteering those. I think the key thing is be visible in whatever you decide to do. Either is in industry or in area that you're passionate about. Outside of work, start spending time, and, you know, be intentional about this. You know, really everything has a cost to it, right? So how you allocate your time and resources, be very intentional about what type of influence you want to have in the industry. What are the key organization and key individual you want to build a relationship, and start from that.
Absolutely. I think also some of you guys probably attended our session last time and also the time before. So we had a negotiation seminar with Dr. Nancy Liu. And also we had a networking seminar with Big Joe from Silicon Valley, 硅谷大舅. And then those two are extraordinary examples of you know, individuals who expanded their influence through you know, kind of a KOL, key opinion leader approach, right? They have their own YouTube channel, they have their own Bilibili channel as well. Some of them even had their own WeChat public account, you know, kind of talk about their personal experience in finding a job, in ascending to the leadership roles. How do you do product management, and attend sessions like this to kind of share the knowledge, share your perspective, and not be afraid to share anything you talk about on the LinkedIn as well. So I think that's my take too. So if you are not as extrovert as they are, I'm definitely not. I don't have my own YouTube channel, so, and I'm not a网红by any chance. But then I think if you are introvert at the same time, you want to get your voice heard in the industry. One way is to attend those professional seminars like Helen mentioned. There could be things in the pharmaceutical industry, in my own professional analytics or retail. There's a lot of seminars out there as well. I was recently invited to some to speak to. Also kind of a panel, with other VPs in, say, Nordstrom and such, to, speak on the COVID-19 and stuff, things like that, to get your names heard by your peer in the industries. And lastly, use LinkedIn smartly. So I think everyone should have their LinkedIn profile. So I think one of the benefit of using LinkedIn is not just, updating people that, what you did, kind of treat it as a resume, like a public resume platform, but also treating that as a professional influence platform. So you can always share messages, share articles, and then maybe put your own perspective to it. And sometimes you can even broadcast, not any video or audio stream, but you can write blog, tech blog, strategy blog, industry observation. What is the best way to lead teams, and then have your peer, like them. If they comment on it, if they like it, their peer will see it too, right? So this is a way for you to also expanding your influence beyond what's in just what's in your own company, right? It could be beyond your industry or within the industry, and potentially opportunity can arise with that too. All right, so moving on to the next question. So in the this is actually, I think someone was mentioning this question too. Maybe it's yeah, that's right. I'll get back to that. So in the age of working from home and COVID-19, especially with the situation is going to persist, I heard Facebook is having work from home till July next year. So it's going to be the norm. So we won't see each other at work until 2021. And so what are the ways to expand our influence remotely, right? And then I think people are asking this question too from SP. He said, hi, Helen, do you have any advice on building the network, reading the room, and having influence as a new hire, but especially in the working from home environment, like what Peyton just said. And then Peyton said, how to stay aware of the workplace dynamics while working from home. So all of these questions, Helen, I'm not sure if you can share some of your perspective, reading the room when you're not in the room, and how to deal with this pandemic situation where things are going to be persisting for a long time.
Yeah, this is a challenging. A lot of us are dealing with, and this is an ongoing discussion even with our team and our lead team. I just offer a few nuggets, a few practice. I think work from home, everything, so you don't have a hallway conversation anymore. You don't get this casual interaction. Every interaction become a deliberate interaction, right? So it's especially challenging for the new people. I think part of that is, be very intentional about using your time, schedule time with people, identify the key people that, if you look at organization as a network, study your organization, study the interactions. If you could even use you have group meetings and see who's talking, what they're talking about, what the topic they care about, right? So, for new people, you really try to understand, listen to the team meetings to understand what people care about, and actually try to follow up, right? Try to build the connections. One part of that is seek the common ground and seek the common interest. Try to start building some relationship with the team members and start with what they talk about in the meetings and follow up and share your perspective and go deeper, right? That's one way of building relationship with your new team. The other part is to, if you are more seasoned in the organization, then what are the key hubs of the networks, what are the key people that in this organization, and stay in touch with those key people, schedule regular meetings and make sure you have a topic to discuss. Don't waste people's time. And it's very important to do your homework, right? It's very important when you have a meeting with people, you can have a sense that I can have a dialogue, right? the communication and relationship building is two-way street. It's not never one way. So it's you can have something to offer and other people can benefit from you can offer. So be very intentional about understanding what they need and then be able to offer that needs so you could build those connections. And when you have the phone call, make sure, try to have the video up so that people can see and face-to-face. You can gauge whether that person, is interested in the topic you're talking about, or do they get what you're saying? Do you need to clarify? Do you need to follow up? And those are very, very important cues that you need to make a practice of have video calls versus audio calls, because so much just lost if you don't see the facial expression. Then it's you just miss majority of the information that people transmit to.
Absolutely. I think I really like that notion. People tend to use chat and email. If you can have a conference, virtual conference, have a virtual conference. If you can have your camera up, show your face, do that too. So this is something, the challenge that we had a while back when we first started working from home back in probably March timeframe, and then where everyone's a little shied away from sharing the video and things are a little awkward. So I actually made that ground rule within my team, within my department, say, hey, if you're having a meeting with us, turn on your camera so we can see you, right? If you're shy away, you can show half the face, that's fine. So, but at least the very minimum, the moment we start doing that, other teams start doing that too. The departments and all the senior leaders start doing that. And then when the senior leaders start doing that, their team also start doing that too. So I think this is a way for you to kind of propagate, making sure that everyone can, do something together so we can simulate, kind of working in the office kind of environment. So you can read the body language, you can, get their emotions. I think something related to that is, it doesn't really matter if you're working at a remote meeting or in a physical meeting, but always send follow-ups, send a recap. This is what we discussed, notions 1, 2, and 3, and then here's action item and who's leading what, and then follow up with those two, right? So, and again, this is a good practice even without a virtual meeting, but with a real meeting, you want to do that as well. So those are things we can do. And also with regard to, all the loss of coffee chat, basically all those casual conversation, casual encounters now becomes all intentional. Now that's inevitable. What I've done in the past is, at least for my teams, we have virtual team building. And then there are things we can do, on Zoom, you can play some game, you can, have everyone kind of use the breakout room, and then have, everyone just be able to catch up a little bit for 2 minutes, and then we can rotate, right? That's one way to have some small talks. And if you use Zoom at work, there's a breakout room you can really leverage, try to get people to speak one-on-one for about 2 minutes, and then they rotate to the next person. It's a great way to do a virtual team building. And if you're in the possession of some kind of a budget, I also advise you to use that. Right now, all of the physical team buildings are gone anyways. So use some budget, maybe send a bottle of wine to your team, to one of your team members, or every one of your team members, and let's have a wine tasting, at virtual team building. Everyone open the camera, do cheers together, and then, just talk about your life, and you don't want to take that away. This is extremely important to keep the team cohesive, in a challenging time like this. And I think other things is really just, might not apply to everyone, that we're thinking about. So this is just, some anecdotal example just coming from my team is, so we're thinking about having a physical gathering. When we do a team building, we typically do the last, in the past years, where we take a Friday off, we go out, do something fun. We're thinking about doing that here too. So we might do a hiking trip as a team on a Friday. So on a working day, we're not taking their personal time away. This is their work hour anyways, but, take the team out for a hike on Friday. We can have a little social distancing, you're wearing a mask, and you can even bring your own lunch or bring your own beer, right? And then you can have some kind of a conversation, face-to-face interaction, especially since we onboarded 2 new hires after the pandemic happened. So this is also an opportunity for them to see the faces, tie the name to the faces, and get to see them in real person, and it really help a new hire feel like they're kind of belongs to a family, belongs to a company where it's tangible, right? As opposed to everyone is just intangible online. Just some of the perspective from my end. Helen, do you have anything else to add, or this is good?
Yeah, this is good. We also do a lot of virtual team building as well. to just make sure we connected other than work. Yeah, that's
absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So I think the next one is slightly interesting topic. As the situation, as you guys probably saw, all those things happening with current administration, banning WeChat, banning TikTok, there's, calling things China virus and such. It kind of raises some sort of a discriminative nature. I definitely hear, when the pandemic first appeared, people calling this China virus, at the meeting where I was present, where I was very unhappy about. But then how do you deal with that, especially, in this, I think that's somewhat related to influence, but then, how do you deal with supervisor, manager, or colleague who kind of discriminate against Asian or Chinese in the setting, especially, in this current situation?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple layers on this, right? So, first of all, discrimination is not allowed, right, at the corporate setting. So if it's truly a discriminatory act or languages, and those should be reported, right, to HR. A lot of times, so if they're individual that is just outright be discriminatory, make a discriminatory remark about Asian and Chinese, and those people need to be called out. I think, if they do that first time in public, you should have actually this happened, I was experiencing some of them, and have a private conversation with that individual, and then be very straightforward. Don't don't beat around the bushes, cut straight to the course. Be very direct about what they have said and what is the impact landed on you. And then also leave with that's not tolerated in the company, and then you don't want to see this happen again. Be very frank, just use that words, because don't try to beat around the bushes. There's nothing to beat around bullshit about. And then also tell them, if this happened the second time, and I'm gonna call you out in public, because that's just not right? It's not tolerated. And especially in this diversity inclusion environment, and this just not a tolerable behavior. And also talk to your boss about that, right? And then say, this is very discriminating, and how is the impact on me, right? Make me uncomfortable, and belittle me as a valuable team members, and nobody should get that kind of treatment, nobody, right? And including me. So this should not be a tolerated behavior. That's, elevated to your management. But a lot of times, so having said that, this is when it's very obvious, right? Outright. But a lot of times things are very subtle, and you can sense them, but you cannot pinpoint them. And you could sense the attitude towards you, but it's not, you can't pinpoint exactly what the things that they said are wrong. So for those subtle situation, I think you have to go a little bit deeper to understand the origin of that. A lot of times it could be the ignorance, and it could be the anxiety the person is experiencing, and you want to find out what's causing that anxiety. It could be something else. It's cause of that. That's just, whatever discrimination, subtle discrimination, it's a manifest of a stress or off comment, and with no bad intentions. So you want to really delineate between the outright intention of discrimination versus some ignorance that people has done with unintended consequences. So for the latter, you want to take this opportunity to talk to people, to make the connection and educate them, and how this will land on you, how this impact on you, and it's not what very possible is not their intent. You make me sad, and make me it's devaluing me. It's impacting me as effectively as a team members, and you don't. You wish they will not happen again. So I think you want to differentiate those two, and for certain ones, take this opportunity to educate people and make the connection and turn them around.
Absolutely. I think there's also kind of a reflecting back to your earlier example, using might, do not be afraid with conflict when necessary, right? When you see conflict, when you see things that you want to call out, don't be afraid to call out. The more you hesitated, the more advanced it will make in the future.
Yeah, I also emphasize here, so never ever get emotional. So in this type of situation, you want to stay calm and you want to stay professional, and all your language needs to be professional, and it cannot come across as a threat, right? So then it's defeat your whole purpose, right? So you have to be very straight talker and be very calm, and practices with your colleague if you are with your friends. In this case, you want to be, because that will backfire.
Okay, so and also so that's very good. So what are the ways to expand influence in communities specifically? Do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, I would say volunteer. Volunteer in the communities and, get to know people.
Yeah, so also like, it's probably a good time for us to do a little advertising. So if you are interested in helping out with communities like us, feel free to be volunteers. So we're always looking for people to contribute to this nonprofit and have ways for you to come to us and really help us, maybe get, for example, note-taking, right? So listen to lectures and try to share some of the things you're taking notes, so we can share with a broader audience who didn't have time to, to read through or watch the video, but to kind of have a text summary of what we discussed. So we're always welcoming people like that. And also, we're looking for people who can come here and help us present the next topic as well. So if you're interested in giving back to the community and also try to expand your influence beyond your own professional circles, this is a good opportunity. So putting that question there, and that's brought up the what I want to talk about. So appreciate that. And also, this is also very common too. So how do you effectively communicate with the team without the necessary professional knowledge and the background, right? So when example is probably you're an inherited team that you have no prior knowledge. I think you talked about that already. But when you communicate with say engineering team, when you compare or communicating with the marketing teams, that you don't have a whole lot of knowledge about what they're doing, and who they are, what their background are. How would you do the communication effectively or expand your influence effectively?
Yeah. So this is kind of vague. So I'm going to try to put a little bit example and see if it's what you're asking. I think, as a leader, right, I think one of the key skills that you have to be sharpened is the learning agility. So when you go to a new team and you go to a new domain, you have to do your homework. Even though you don't have in-depth knowledge, but you have to be, brace yourself about what is the major challenges that people are facing. What are the headwinds that people are facing, and how do people go about doing that at a higher level? You have to have a frame of references about the team's challenges and what the mission of team to try to accomplish. And so try to use those frameworks to bring team together. It's a lot of times as a leader, you don't really do a lot of day-to-day activities, right? So people, and engage as a leader, it's very important for you to foster the collaborative environment and the open innovation. And also people are willing to speak up. So foster those authentic conversations, facilitate the conversations. And that's very, a lot of times work gets done through a team, right? So you want to play a role as a facilitator, be able to facilitate the discussion and brainstormings. So when people leave out, that you have a better solution. And then so when you lead a team, make sure you set agendas, right? And make sure you also have the meeting before the meetings. If you want some key people to speak up the ideas, to help with the key agenda, have those meetings beforehand. So you have people you have a team member has the in-depth knowledge to support your agenda. And also at the end of the meeting, also always conclude the meeting, the action items, the follow-ups, the decision that the team has made, and send the meeting minutes as a follow-up to remind everybody, this is what we have decided. This is what we discussed, and this is what we decided. And this is the action item, and who owns each action item. So this will bring the team together in a coherent way, even though you don't have the in-depth knowledge, but you have team members who knows the inherent knowledge, but you have to have a frame of reference to guide the conversation, which you have to do the homework.
All right, really appreciate it. I think that's probably not all the questions we have on the panel discussion. And I want to kind of bring this opportunity, maybe you have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions now. I think most are already addressed by the chat messages, but if you have any additional questions that you want to bring up in the chat, we have time for maybe 1 more questions in the chat. Or if you want to take the mic directly, feel free to do so. You're able to speak up. Let's see. So while I guess we're waiting, I think just 1 more question here that probably ignored accidentally. I think it's this from Peyton. So how do you identify rules in the environment? Because earlier we talked about, like, breaking the rules, right? You want to identify, well, I guess if you want to be a rule breaker at a point in time, not all the time, but you want, every once in a while you want to be able to, achieve what you want you to do by circumventing, kind of go around it. But how do you identify those rules in the first place?
The rules of the organization?
And spoken too, both spoken rules and unspoken rules.
This is a very interesting question. I just have run into a scenario that my team is actually learning the ropes of another team, and the rules is not spoken, is not spelled out. It's very frustrating. So this is where your broad networks comes in, right? So you want to talk to different people. So a lot of times, building the network influence, not necessarily just people at high ups, right? Actually, people at, even lower level or running the day-to-day operations, they have information you needed, right? So especially when you try to understand how to get things done, you actually have to talk to the operators, right? Who runs the daily operations. They have nuances. They know the best practices. And they, all you need to do is actually find out who has the key and ask the question, right? So that's where you need to explore your network to say who has the key, who always ask the question, who has done this before, and who is the key people running the operation, and talk to them to find out, the question you ask is, how do people normally do this, right? What is the best practice people do, and what are the typical challenges people are facing, and how do they handle that? What is the precedence of that? Ask those questions. And then people will, if you ask enough of people, you'll get the gist of it. Hope that helps. Daniel, are you talking? I think we lost your voice.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Apologies. Yes. I'll repeat over again. Apologies on that. So appreciate everyone for staying up to this point. Here's our WeChat QR code. So if you follow that, scan your phone, you'll follow our official WeChat account. We'll have future events. Next one coming up is I think on the 15th. So next weekend, we'll have a storytelling session. So we have some little exercise about how to use storytelling at work. And then towards the end of September, end of August and beginning of September, we'll also have discussion about, one is MBA application, number 2 is persuasion sessions, and we'll also do a managerial communication discussion as well. Again, appreciate the time, especially you, Helen, for putting the slides together. And we also do have a leadership and influence WeChat group as well. This is basically was created from Jun Huang's discussion, I think seminar 42, when we talk about leading effective team. He's also a MBA for executive classmates of ours at Wharton, of Helen's and mine. And so, this is a forum for us to ask questions and try to answer those questions ourselves. If you're interested in those soft power, expanding those influences, and how to lead the team, how to conduct negotiation, how to do networking in the future, how to do a persuasion as well. This is a place we can discuss things together. So feel free to join that group. And also, we're always looking for volunteers, like I mentioned earlier, and speakers. So if you're interested in helping out, helping us to expand, our own influence, right, and then be able to contribute back to community, feel free to contact me directly. You guys all know, my informations, and you can just talk to me on WeChat or scan this QR code. All right, thank you so much. And then I appreciate your time, Helen. I think we are slightly over time, so 3 minutes over the 2 hours time frame. We'll see you guys in some other discussion sessions. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
Thank
you,
Helen.
Daniel. Thank you, everybody. Stay in touch in WeChat. We can learn from each other.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.